Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties on this freezing Monday. And I realize that people might be seeing this on some other day, but we do record these on Mondays. Today, joining me from West Australia, I have Lee,
Hello?
probably in a slightly warmer climate.
Yeah, maybe. Well, we haven't got snow, so I guess that's automatically makes us warmer.
Could use some global warming.
Yeah.
And from Victoria, we have Tim.
Hey, well, I'm in Ballarat, which is probably the coldest place
Nope.
in Victoria.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Coldest place in Victoria, I will give you. It is
We do get
current. Uh,
minus a few degrees.
I was going to say it's at the time we're recording, it is presently -1 in Canberra.
Jeez.
So, yeah, it's
Have
a
you had
little.
snow?
No, there's not enough moisture for snow.
Oh, bummer.
So we just get all the cold.
Yep.
I digress.
Yeah.
This is meant to be about politics, not about weather. So, small talk champion of the world here. Moving on to this week's topic. So, helicopters. Should we take them on, junkets to fundraisers? So obviously I want to talk about Bronwyn Bishop. Well, I want to start by talking about Bronwyn Bishop and then expanding to all parliamentary sort of pissing away the taxpayers' dollars, if you will. I suppose, seeing as we should know exactly what this case is already about, I might kick it off to either of you guys to start ranting on about
Well, we
improper
probably should actually explain for the benefit of anybody who isn't
Yeah,
currently in the
Ah.
24-hour Australian media cycle.
it's
Fine,
basically
fine. Let's assume we have some
it's
international
basically
listeners.
the worst type of expense claim you could possibly think of.
Okay.
It's first of all, it's a trip to a party fundraiser, which is supposed to be not covered by travel entitlements. Then there's also the fact that rather than just drive from Geelong, where she was, to Melbourne, where the fundraiser was, she took a helicopter.
It's the other
And
way around. She went from Tullamarine to Geelong.
sorry, well, she
Yeah.
went. She travelled. She travelled by helicopter. Uh,
What was
when
an
she,
hour-long car trip?
Yeah.
yeah,
So let me just explain the story to international people who might not be accustomed to the 24-hour news cycle of Australia. We had a Speaker of the House, similar to John Boehner, or I don't know what the British one's name is.
Yeah, I don't know who he's other. But anyway,
Anyway,
the Speaker of the
so
Commons.
the Speaker of the Commons. Basically, she decided to fly to a Liberal Party fundraiser to speak about issues of Parliament. So, the Speaker of the House really is just a speaker, right? They don't really have any say in government, etc., etc., etc. They're supposed to be this impartial person keeping the peace of the House. So she went to a party fundraiser in Melbourne. So she flew down there specifically for it, and then on top of that, she spent $5,227 on a 1-hour chartered helicopter ride to this fundraising event where she landed on a golf course. And not just any golf course, like this was, one of the more exclusive golf courses
and you can
there.
see there's footage available of it, I think, which shows a grand landing on the golf course. Many of the other Liberal Party members there thought it was quite hilarious.
Yep, yep. It was a total, like, it just represents exactly what people think of the worst of politicians,
And
the
it was, and it was over $5,000 for the helicopter ride. And there's people have been ringing up talkbacks saying $5,000. I could have organised the trip for under 1,000.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just that, but like on top of that, I think it's come out that she spends something like $1,000 a day on limos when she was.
But she had the trips overseas,
Yeah.
which what did they add up to in total?
It was like $500,000.
$300,000.
Was it? Okay.
I remember.
Yeah.
Her total expenses for the past year were over $800,000.
So if you want to put this into perspective, that's basically a house in inner city Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was chasing some. She was over in Europe to chase some appointment. I can't remember.
It was like chairperson of the Parliamentary Union or something.
Yeah, it was some
Some
ego.
useless job. Like, it's not exactly like it's going to add a whole lot to Australia's well-being by her being the chair of that.
Well,
I mean, and of course,
There was
what's happened
$80,000
subsequent
there too.
subsequent to that, of course, what happens is one person gets busted for expenses, and then it just opens the can of worms. And so now we're finding out that, there's a Labor guy, Tony Burke, who got busted for like $800,000 of expenses. You've got basically it's hunting season on everybody. It's a bit like the British expenses scandal where once one person got busted cleaning their moat with taxpayer money, it's opened up. It just they go hunting for everybody, which is good. Like, it's a great thing.
No. That's actually a counterexample, right? Because after the British expenses, there was the entire thing that happened, but then nothing happened after that, right? It was in the media. People repaid. People resigned. All of that stuff happened, right? And then after that, nothing, right? There was no changes to parliamentary thing until there's another case that happens again, right? You just won't hear about this anymore. The truth is, like, basically there's a trough, and we hear a lot about the politicians pissing away money, but you never hear about the staffers pissing away money, and they piss away a lot of money.
There was a famous case a few years back. Sophie Mirabella's staffer, I think, took it was a cab or something from Tullamarine to out where her electorate office is in
Di. Yeah.
Yeah, up there, and billed the taxpayer for it, and he bragged about it on Facebook, and of course got busted for it and had to pay it back.
Yeah.
So
and of course, I mean, there was another round of this when Peter Slipper got busted, spending cab charge rides going around to all these different wineries and stuff, and that brought another fresh round of, claim and counterclaim and recriminations. And it's the thing that you can't trust politicians to look after themselves. Like, this is why I tell, when I talk with my non-libertarian friends who are less skeptical about Parliament and about politicians, to say, well, can they manage their own affairs competently? Like, if they want to run all these sections of the economy, let's look how they behave personally. Well, all of them do it. None of them are truly apologetic. There's probably only a handful who actually give a crap, and you just can't trust them to look after themselves because it's just not what they do. It's just not, the incentives go all the wrong way.
And also remembering Bronwyn Bishop, she topped this whole thing off by, I'm not sure if you saw that press conference on Saturday.
Yeah, it's all within the entitlements. Yeah, I saw that.
And, I'm not going to apologise, and
So here's the thing, right? I always hear politicians make the comparison between the public sector and the private sector, right? In reality, if someone had done this in the private sector, this is actually a massive fraud on company owners, and it's actually treated as a proper crime. It's treated as fraud.
Well, there was I remember.
And people are arrested for this kind of shit.
Yeah, there was Richard Dennis on the drum tonight. Is somebody who I not normally agree with. The guy from the Australia Institute said that if someone had done this with a Centrelink benefit, they'd be hauled before the courts and prosecuted for it.
Bingo. And see, this is why I'm just like, okay, so what I would like as a drastic overhaul to this entire thing is, first of all, the only travel you are entitled to, in my opinion, for staffers and for politicians alike, to be paid for by the taxpayer, is from your electorate office to Parliament. That is it, right?
Oh, I'd also like a budget so that...
No. Yeah. So that can all be worked out. That comes to the second part of my thing, right? It's like, that is all you're entitled to, and then you get a travel budget, right? And that travel budget encompasses everything that you're going to spend in the year. And it should only be something small. It should be like $50,000, right? And that's $50,000 shared between the parliamentarian and their staffers, right? So the more out of this, electoral sort of zone that they're getting into, all of these, I'm going to go to this party fundraiser over here or whatever, not all of this bullshit, right? All of that suddenly dries up. Or, better yet, the parties actually start paying for that shit. Right? Because right now what the case is that these parliamentarians are going to these places funded by the taxpayer and generating revenue for their parties. Yep. And I think that's actually wrong, because it's a form of direct subsidy to political parties. I don't think it generates anything to the benefit for Australians. I don't think it meets the condition of meeting constituents, because usually they're not meeting constituents. And I think it gets even worse in the sense that it creates the perverse incentives. Creates a perverse incentive structure for rent seeking.
Yeah, I mean, and party fundraisers, I know in my division, they're happening all the time. Like, probably every couple, like in a 2-month period, you might have sort of 4, maybe 5 in that period, sort of maybe between 4 and 6. So, they're all doing it, and I imagine it's actually a kind of a bit of a sort of a payback in a sense. Like it's a kickback. You get elected, therefore you help the party raise for the next election. And actually,
that's fine. They should do it out of their own money.
Yeah, they should. Yeah. Like, I don't think it adds anything. I've been to some of these fundraisers. The politicians aren't any more honest, really, than when they're in Parliament or on Q&A or any other situation. So it's not like exactly you're going to get some sort of benefit to the democratic debate. Essentially, you just get to hear the talking points in person rather than watching them on television.
So one of the things that really pissed me off, right, is that the way she argued that this was within the entitlements was that she was over there to talk about issues regarding Parliament. And Peter Costello came up with the best thing on Andrew Bolt, where he goes, by the way, this is probably the only time you're ever going to hear Andrew Bolt take a position against someone in the Liberal Party. But basically, he said, look, if I go to a children's party, right, and explain to them issues of Parliament, right, they're not going to come out knowing any more than what I went in, right? So you can't really justify that as a public expense. And similarly, Bronnie ideally can't justify this as, an actual parliamentary business expense. And she's not the only one doing it, right? Nova Paris-Kneebone had... that is her name, right?
Nova Paris.
Nova Paris, yeah.
Nova Paris,
She's separated now.
Separated from Kneebone. So sorry. So Nova Paris, my bad.
Which is like the perfect way to describe somebody who was an athlete. I think a runner even.
So Nova Paris, who's now the Labor senator for Northern Territory, she recently funded basically a trip for her family, right, on the taxpayer dollar to come to Canberra when she wasn't even there. Right?
Yeah, right.
I think, like you said earlier, it is a case of them being utterly unable to manage their own travel, unable to manage their own... And look, I always come back to the private sector on this one. In the private sector, the stuff these guys get up to is actually criminally fraud.
Yeah.
Right? And I know we can't treat it that way because they're parliamentarians and they get to write their own rules. But maybe a little less pigs to the trough, right? Maybe a little more structure, maybe something to make it look, at least give the optics that the parliamentarians are responsible.
I mean, I've had a few podcasts over the years about kind of talking about the management of public finances and accountability, and it's one of those things that it's very hard to police. So I think that you could go either a budget, here is a budget, no questions asked, or there is no budget, but everything you do is logged on a website. Like, I think there's the either two ways. Like,
I'm a fan of the latter.
Yep.
Just because I think the court of public opinion is capable of going a lot stronger against the parliamentarian.
And I think the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, like Tim Andrews, like his idea of, which I don't know if it's specifically he came up with it, but
it's probably Grover Norquist's.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, the portal, like the expenses portal, where basically everything.
Okay, so that's before Grover Norquist. That's actually been implemented in what's the name? My brother is obsessed with this.
Yeah,
because
it's basically if you spend 20 grand, if the government, if any part of a government, spends over 20 grand, it goes on a website, and it just logs all of it, so it's all open to be searched. Transparency portal. That's what I'm.
Transparency. Yeah. I can't remember which town it was in Texas. God, I need to look this. We needed to look this up before the show.
It's a terrific idea, but I think that's probably a better way, because it's one of those things. I mean, I think 50 grand is probably enough, but
so
if you think about like politicians that, like senators, like a Western Australian senator has got a huge area to cover. Yeah. When you start talking about travel allowances, like that actually could be meaningful.
Yeah.
So of course you could have like, certain people have different allowances, but then it comes to where, like in Western Australia, if somebody's in Mandurah, which is only maybe an hour's drive, they're treated as a country MP, even though it's a short trip. Well, it's an hour on the freeway.
Yeah.
So you create. So I reckon it's better you have less rules, but you make it more transparent rather than coming up with these are the strict rules, because they can manipulate the rules.
Yeah.
And this is where all Bronwyn Bishop's flip-flopping and all over the entitlement. It all was within the entitlement. It's just the entitlement system is completely screwed.
And there's the trick that they also do if they're, or what I hear mentioned is when Julia Gillard went to a wedding and she stopped by to open up a new highway, and so she could say she was on official business and charge the taxpayer. So there's tricks that they use as well, which is why I like your transparency idea, but the other thing that I would push for is a budget.
A budget.
I mean, it's a system that can't be fixed though. Like in some ways, I don't worry about fixing it because it doesn't matter. Like the only thing that matters is getting politicians to do less stuff. That is to make them part time and then make them not paid at all. Like that's the only way you can fix this problem. You can't as long as they're working full time for the benefit of the taxpayer, they're gonna do this kind of nonsense.
Well, I'd argue the job of politics is actually the job of parliamentarian is to always work against the public interest.
Well, yeah, that's why air quotes.
Yeah. So, but I actually want to get back to that story in Texas. If I recall correctly, the only reason it worked, and I know a lot of public policy analysts have said this, is that effectively at a local government level, it's not so much about political parties, right? But at maybe at the higher levels, it changes, right? Like, especially once the parties get involved. Do you really, really think, based on the discussion that's been going on in the political sphere today, in the media, and I'm sure you've got friends that are, a little bit apolitical, well, not really apolitical, but rightfully skeptical of each party, you'll find that they don't really swap parties all of a sudden, just because a guy is being flippantly with their money. Right, there's a lot more party loyalty at higher levels, at state and federal levels. I think that the transparency option works brilliantly at local government, but I'm not entirely convinced that it'll work at a federal government.
Well, except that I think the best thing that this does is it creates skepticism about the motivations of politicians. Like, politicians are in the full-time business of well, yeah, but they've done a pretty good job over the years of convincing people that they're needed and they do all these valuable things and they serve the interests of everyone else, as opposed to those nasty corporations and nasty businesses that are only in it for profit. And what these sorts of things do, and I think this is like where the message of Liberties got a bit of grip, a bit of purchase on the issue, is we can say, look at how they behave. They do not behave like people who are interested in the public good. They're interested in serving themselves, and this just adds fuel to the fire. And it's this sort of stuff. I mean, it's what does the Declaration of Independence say? Like when the train of abuses becomes intolerable. I think it adds fuel to the fire that it's going to get people to the point where they're going to say, we're sick of this shit. We're not going to take it anymore. And and that's when real change happens.
You're right. It's low hanging fruit. Right.
Yeah. And with the transparency portal, what would be great if you get an RSS feed, and so it just pops up onto Facebook and Twitter automatically, so people can see it every day. Every expense gets logged. Every expense goes up.
I was actually going to say so all of this stuff is currently only available by Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the burdens of trying to get these details.
Yeah.
But it's not to say that you can't get these details. In fact, I can't remember the name of the organization, but they do actually put these FOIs in every year.
Yeah.
Right, and that's how we know about this.
Yeah.
Right now. But yeah, I mean, that one little change would... I'm not sure it would actually change anything. I think it would change things to libertarians because we actually care about this stuff, and because we're wonks, because we actually read this shit. But I don't think the vast majority of people will be affected. I think the only way to drastically cut down on this behavior is, like Tim said, have a cap. Right, and it's got to be.
There is the other. Like we've just spoken about. You've said in the private sector, this is called fraud, and I've also put forward the Centrelink example. Should politicians be held to the same standard as a private citizen would?
Yeah, I think the Centrelink standard is like you should have the. If you said let's have the same rules for Centrelink, payments and the Parliament, like I think that would be. It's just how do you actually enforce those rules? Because whoever's enforcing the rules has to be.
You got to have the rules written down first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So first of all, these rules aren't written down anywhere, and I know because like people were just like, oh, it's within the entitlements, and I said, can someone actually link me these entitlements?
Yeah.
Right. And I've asked around, I've looked on Osley, I've looked in legislation. It's not anywhere. Nobody can point to me and say, this is the rule set. And as far as I can tell, the only sort of thing resembling a rule set seems to be this quote from Tony Abbott at a meeting, saying, telling his fellow politicians, guys, you got to go to an official business event first before you go to the fundraisers, right, to legitimize the expense. And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, that's about right. That's what Millard was doing. That's what Tony Burke. That's what they've all been doing for ages.
Yeah. You know what you really need to do? We need to do what they did in Boston when they were upset over like the stamp act and stuff. We need to go to their house and
burn them
and literally ripped them to pieces. Like they went to the governor's mansion and literally tore every bit of wall down, tore up all the floorboards. And if the guy had been there, he would have died. So we just need to get a lynch mob. We need to go to their houses and we just need to tear up shit.
That's what
I'm telling you.
I'm not a fan.
Like I have to say with regard to this issue that I like the public reaction to these things. They're angry about these, and I just think we need to just harvest that anger and frame it in our message.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree, but sort of moving from this, and I forgot what I was going to talk about next.
GST. Mike Baird.
Yes.
The endless discussion of the 15%.
So I remember this from the election campaign.
It happens in cycles. Like basically every so often, somebody brings up, "Hey, let's raise the GST to 15%."
The having a consumption tax is a more efficient way of collecting tax than
only if you don't raise it.
Yeah. Let me finish. Then income tax or company tax. So if they wanted to raise the GST to 15%, I would say let's reduce some of the other more inefficient taxes.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. I mean, okay, so for the benefit of our international viewers, this is about the Premier of the state of New South Wales came out a couple of days ago, as have millions of people before, dozens of politicians previously come out and said, let's raise our sales tax, our national sales tax on goods and services from 10% to 15%. It's an ongoing thing.
Now, here's my biggest objection to this, right? People can do 10% in their head, right? Just take off a zero at the end. People can't do 15% in their heads. That is hard to do. That's really, really hard to do, especially when you're drunk.
They have 15% in New Zealand, and they seem to be going along with it fine.
Because do you do many calculations of GST in your head when you're drunk?
Are you saying that that's why Houston lost the 1993 election, because people couldn't do 15%?
Yes,
because he was drunk.
No. You have to. So, this is me being probably disparaging towards my fellow Australians, but you have to imagine public policy from the perspective of someone drunk in like the eastern suburbs of Sydney at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
They're buying their kebab on the way home, and they sit at the register and they're going...
This sort of person isn't filling out a BAS.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. This person is paying the tax and they are upset because, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. So, okay, my issue with this is firstly, it won't solve the problem because politicians will just spend more money. So,
actually, my biggest objection to this is it's not revenue neutral. So forget the entire, taxes will come down, GST will go up to make up that difference. That's not what they're proposing.
That is the greatest problem with it. But the reason why this is back on the agenda is because the state governments have basically no good revenue streams. Everything's collected by the federal government, and so the state governments always have to go around with a begging bowl to the federal government saying, please fund our
But the thing is, the begging bowl will never go away. So it's you look at the West Australia is a great example. Okay, so we have had a big cut to our GST because there's a bit of lag. So for the benefit of those who aren't in Australia, the GST is collected by the federal government. It's divvied up according to a formula set by some commission and then given to the states. And if you look at Western Australia, so they had a boom time, so therefore their GST revenue got cut because there's a distribution factor to this. Like the poor states get more GST than the rich states.
It's a stupid formula.
It is a stupid formula, but
it's not
if you look at the behaviour of politicians,
it's just Tasmania.
Yeah. Well, so Western Australia got a huge cut. My state of Western Australia got a huge cut because they had a mining boom, right? And now it's like this, and because there's a lag time in how it's evolved. Basically, now that the economy is going down the tubes a bit. There's now this cut to the GST, And the West Australia Premier, if you talk to Colin Bennett, he'll say, "Oh, we're having budget problems because the GST." That is absolute, complete, and utter bullshit. Absolute bull. You could park. There's not enough shit that comes out of every bull in the known universe that is more than what is coming outside Colin Barnett's mouth. And this is the reason why, because spending has gone
really
up.
feel.
Oh, it's. I'm not even beginning to get started. Anyway, the reality is there will always be a begging bowl because state politicians will just keep spending more money. Now that's the real problem. It's the problem that the Liberals, before they got into Canberra, before Tony Abbott was elected as Prime Minister, they would say we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem, and they were right. Yes. And now they're full of crap because they're turning around and saying we got a revenue problem. Well, they should have stuck with their first answer, and that's why this is always a problem, because the begging bowl will always remain because they're just incompetent idiots who don't know how to keep their promises, and they don't know how to manage their budget properly because of public choice.
It's not just public choice because they want to get elected. Well, actually,
that is public choice.
Yeah,
it's our crappy federation.
Well, it's actually not. It's not just This problem exists in federations. It exists in our federation. It exists everywhere in the world. It's just unavoidable. It's a natural consequence of democracy in general. However, I want to sort of digress from that and just go, well, guys. Crap, and I'd forgotten because I was talking about democracy, damn it. Sorry. Basically, what I'm getting at here is the 15% that they wanted to raise, right? Now, libertarians are entirely opposed to this idea. Like, I know there are some libertarians that go, okay, look, I'd rather have a 15% GST and say a top tax rate of 0, for personal income, right? Which would which in effect would be a massive, tax cut.
Well, that's my ideal.
Yes. I would be happy to pay 15% GST if it meant no more personal income tax. That's fine by me. If that was the deal being struck, I'm okay with that. However, the deal that is being struck isn't that, right? What they want is the entire they want it raised to 15%, and they said at some point in future, right, they might decrease the top marginal tax rate. Right, from 49% to 45% is what they were talking about. And I sat there.
Whoa! What a massive tax cut! Oh my god! Stop the presses!
So
a 4% cut to tax rate. Oh my gosh!
It gets better than that, right? So that 4% that we're talking about there, that is precisely the amount that the Abbott government raised. Right?
Well, it's 2%.
2%. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So
it is a slight cut.
Well, I think they also wanted to increase the Medicare levy. But I've taken that figure out anyway. So it would probably be still around the 47%. But the point is essentially, what they're talking about is we will raise the GST by 5% to cover that that increase in the tax that we did on high income earners when we came into power. So I'm just sitting there going like, I don't understand this. So you want to undo the tax increase you did by charging everyone 5% more. Yeah. I'm just sitting there going like, you know what else would be great? If you just drop that 2% and cut that from the budget.
Yep.
Right.
I actually think, like, when I first read that Joe Hockey wanted wanted to go to the next election with tax cuts on the agenda, there was not tears as bitter. I could not find enough bitter tears anywhere to like weep them, because it's just like, they've come, with all this, well, yeah, I do too. And I was looking forward to maybe seeing some in the Abbott government, and it didn't happen at all. So it's almost like it's an insult, like to come after all that they've done, considering that they still have another year, they still have a whole other budget to give, potentially maybe even 2, I guess, theoretically.
They've still got to actually, not forgetting, try again at have they given up on budget repair? Or...
they've dropped the budget emergency angle.
So therefore we're going for they're proposing, this is going off on a tangent here, the Reagan supply side tax cuts, where we're not going to worry about deficits, we're just going to cut taxes and hope the money comes back in.
Well, they haven't even cut taxes, they're just increasing taxes.
Yeah, no, so the plan is effectively that they're going to increase GST by 5% to basically fund a 2% personal income tax decrease on the top marginal rate. And somehow those funds add up exactly. But see, here's the point, right? If you do that, right, effectively, you make the argument that Labor's been making for ages, in that, that the Liberal Party believes in the rich not paying taxes and the poor basically paying all the taxes.
But it's a fallacy that the GST is a regressive tax. I mean, wealthier people, they all, consume more,
Yeah.
so they're going to pay more GST. It's not a regressive tax.
Well, that I guess that's where it comes into the fact that the reason that
I think you're misunderstanding the word regressive. So the word regressive, and according to leftists, is anything other than the rich paying more.
yeah, that's it. And then not that there's ever a point at which the rich pay enough. It's always they need to pay more, and that's because the reason they want progressive taxation is not because it actually does anything for the good governance. It's just because they hate rich people and they want to punish them, and they want to do that as much as they possibly can. Like it's, if they raise nothing by increasing taxes, they would still do it because
That's true. There was a poll that was done which found exactly that. So
the deficit levy, it was not designed to raise money. It was to make it look like the government was, making wealthier people, help out in budget repair.
So stupid. Like it's, oh my god, just can't handle it. They're just a bunch of wankers. They
so
really
one
are.
of the other things that people missed out in the budget, in this year's budget, was that taxes effectively. Okay, so based on the 4-year projections, taxes effectively went up on the poorest people anyway.
Yep.
So this year, your tax-free threshold was scheduled to go up from $18,000 to $19,233, and it was supposed to go up to $20,100. I'm tempted to say something, and the year after that, it was meant to be. Oh no, it's 2015-16. So next year's budget, it was meant the tax-free threshold was meant to be 21,000. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but the Abbott government basically came in and said your tax-free threshold is going to be staying at 18,000.
Yeah.
So there already has been a tax increase on the poorest of the country.
I mean, bracket creep is basically
that's you're forgetting that projections are things that have never happened, so you can't really call it a tax increase.
It was budgeted for. It was budgeted for.
Yeah. So even their own predictions, which they try to make them as rosy as possible, like, and I think John Humphreys has said this as well, that essentially they're relying on bracket creep to make up, or even their deficit reduction is bracket.
That's what Howard did. Yes, he relied primarily on bracket creep, or rather, what he did, I think, was move the brackets up.
Yeah, he would say I'm a radical tax cutter, but I'm just adjusting for bracket creep.
Yep. Which I thought was, in terms of politics, I think that's actually really clever. Because if it's something that I would catch out, because I have to actually look at the facts and figures, I actually have to do my calculations. When I think it gets to that stage, I think you've done really good politicking. Because people aren't going to listen to me for 10 minutes explaining this issue.
So, I think the conclusion that we can make from both the GST and the expenses issue is that, with raising the GST to 15%, we can't trust politicians to
manage
do the
their
right
own economy. Sorry, to manage their own expenses, let alone the expenses of the country.
Yeah.
Or give us a decent tax cut down the road. I mean, chances of that happening are probably not likely.
Yeah, but Tim, if they cut taxes, you're just going to spend all this money on yourself. But politicians, they look after everybody. They look after poor people. By saying you want to cut taxes, you just want to kick poor people out and put them in cardboard boxes in the street, don't you, Tim? You evil capitalist, you.
I think we're getting to the point where now we're just going to be snarky and ranty. So, and plus it's 30 minutes. So I guess
tilting. We're starting to tilt.
Yeah. All right, so I want to say goodbye to everyone, and we'll catch you next week.
See ya.
See ya.